was just having a lot of conversations with friends that I haven't talked to in a long time. And I just happened to have a conversation with Peter Diamandis, and he's like, yeah, we were just talking about the book launch and how it is different, so different how it was, since 2010. And I was really bummed in some ways because there's no, physical interaction, and not having that like human connection was like, I was kind of like, you could tell I was like bummed. So he's like, well, why don't we do kind of like a Palooza type of thing? And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And that was like pretty much like 4 weeks ago. And then I just started asking people if they want to be involved, like yourself, Peter, Adam Grant, etc. And they all said yes in a way that I was just like, whoa, I guess people do want to talk about it. And I'm just super grateful that they wanted to be part of this conversation and really just expanding the notion of providing the space for people to talk about happiness now that it's changed so much over the last 18 months.
Ask the question, what will I regret 10 years from now if I didn't learn or do it now? So for me, that kind of thinking, and you can do that at 20, you can do that at 30, you can do that at 60, whatever age.
I think if there's one lesson that I would amplify from this scientific literature on helplessness and its opposite, which is a resilient response to adversity, it's that the secret to all of this is not to pretend that you have control or even that you have the ability to predict what the future is for all of us. I mean, it's true that there's uncertainty, chaos, and stress, but to actually look for things that you have some control of that are positive.
I think to me, a growth mindset is part of thinking again, but I would say it's necessary but not sufficient, right? You can be perfectly convinced that you're capable of growing without recognizing that some of your beliefs are wrong, without doubting some of your assumptions, without having the curiosity to explore new information that might contradict your prior opinions, right? So I think that, if you don't believe that it's possible for your own thinking and your own understanding of the world to evolve, then you're probably not going to try. But I think rethinking also requires a level of humility, right? To say that my knowledge is always incomplete, that the search for truth is never finished. It requires a healthy dose of doubt to say I might be wrong about almost everything I believe.
I think it's really the intention of my life just shifted 17 years ago, that happiness, the fulfillment, the purpose would come not from what I would accumulate or hold on to, but what I would give. And I found that the more you give, the more you give. You want to give more. You want to be more useful. You want to help.
I think connection is the new currency. I think for me, inner peace is the new rich, right? Service is the new success. Health is the new wealth. Kindness is the new cool. And as all these things have always been, right? It's just, for me, it has maybe in the life cycle that I'm at now. It's just, over time, your what you prioritize, it changes, over time. And so for me, simplicity is really important.
Happiness, of course, as you share in the book so beautifully. It's not just an outcome; it's a journey. It's not just a destination; it's the way. And but to me, it's not a singular way. It's not an isolated way. It has to be a co-created.
Starting your day with some sort of a mindfulness practice that helps you understand that we have not an obligation, but a privilege as leaders to have an impact on someone in a positive way, and just go about your day with that frame of mind. I think it's sort of a mindset that we need to take every single day. Otherwise, we get overwhelmed and we just get very transactional and trying to get things done. But figure out how can I do it in a way that touches people and builds.
Just trying to process everything that happened in the last couple of years, 18 plus months. There's been this erosion of the boundaries between what's happening in work and what's happening in life. Obviously, everyone's in Zoom land, everyone's just like work-life integration is at its highest. And these concepts that we talk about and this research that we talk about is usually in, the individual space. And then you bring in, and then you talk about in your book, Big Potential, how it's so important to have those social connections.
I
think it became extremely clear in the midst of the pandemic that it is almost impossible to create long-term sustainable happiness without social connection. I think people became so acutely aware that happiness couldn't just be a self-help idea, right? This is something I, do on my own. I don't have to work on this with other people. I can work out at home. I can do happiness work at home, and then I'll be super successful in life. And what we realized so clearly is that so much of our meaning and purpose is wrapped up with other people and those connections. There was that great study that came out that said that that loneliness wasn't the absence of people within your life. It was the absence of feeling like you had a meaningful impact upon them or they upon you.
Happiness and positive psychology in ways that I had not imagined. And then when this book came around, 2020 happened, and then boom, the world changed. So for me, I really wanted to take it beyond happiness. And for me, it's about being more inclusive and wholesome and holistic about our whole selves, whether organizational or in our individual lives more particularly. So that's why I wanted to go.
The question ultimately is, what makes you happy? What generates a happy mindset for yourself, for your family, for your company, for your city, for your society? And I think this event right now and your book, Beyond Happiness, is really for me, a clarion call to pay attention. We pay attention, we do the things we pay attention to. And ultimately, if happiness is your objective, which I think it's the right of every human on the planet, it begins with you paying attention to what makes you happy, and you're taking control of your life.
What choices are you making that will become a story? What was the story of the day? What was, the story of the year for you, for the people around you? And the reason is because when you pull apart what brings us short-run happiness versus longer-term meaning, the best ways to live a life of meaning actually is to kind of prioritize stories, because stories they have highs and they lows and there are arcs, and you're on the edge of your seat when you're hearing good stories.
The thing about happiness is that it can be relative to who you are and what you need. And for me personally, I've always been a very positive, outward facing person that has my share of challenges, but have, for whatever reason, and I think it was a lot to do with my upbringing, have more optimism than pessimism. And I do believe that the optimism helps create the openings for the happiness, to see what your options are and how to pursue those options. I think, though, being in the middle of the pandemic brought to me more struggle in how to find it under that kind of circumstance. It was such a collective experience.
It works well in that kind of such innovative culture. At the same time, knowing those tensions, like what's the best way that you've seen works in being able to handle or embrace them?
I think listening deeply and having assuming the best, assuming that people are benevolent and that they care, and they. Anyone can have a bad day. Anyone can kind of show up ready for a fight, like if they're in a bad mood or something happened in their lives. And so, first let's make the assumption that everyone is here to do good work together, and have a sense of grace and acceptance of where anyone's at. So ask a lot of questions, try to understand what's really going on. Don't take on the toxicity or anything that feels a little I'm noticing that this conversation doesn't feel right. Try to be curious about it and have a beginner's mind about it, and not assume that that there's anything contentious about it.
Had Elvis Presley 8-track. I don't know if you even know what that is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's a big cassette tape. You pop into this player and you could play the music. And
I had the Carpenter's 8-track.
Oh yeah, nice. And I used to play to his concert live at Madison Square Garden. And this is in what is this, early 70s, and that's where it was recorded. And I used to play on a pillows and the couch. I used to just play along with it with some drumsticks. 40 years later, I'm at Madison Square Garden playing a show, and in my dressing room there's a picture of Elvis in the dressing room wall, like, of him being there. I mean, I just, I could have been in any dressing room in that whole building, but I was in that one with him in our, I got a picture with it and everything, but that was this full circle.
I try to urge people to do early on in life is figure out the nature of their own desire, and then later on in life to make sure that they continue to stay in touch with that. Because the nature of your own desire is not simply being path dependent and continue to pedal harder and harder and harder and harder when your skills are starting to decline. That's not following the nature of your own desire, and that's going to lead you to a really
love is locked up in the corporate closet. I'm trying to kick the door in to let it out.
I love that.
It's in the corporate closet because of the way people think about business. And we construct our own narratives, we construct our own vision of the world. And metaphors and narratives are very important to that. And so one of the metaphors that we use to think about business are almost all hyper-competitive.
It's unimaginable for me when I was growing up to even be in the movie industry. Did I ever see anyone that looked like me who was? No. But just weird. We all have our path, and I think the most important thing we can do for ourselves is to try to know ourselves. Where are our passions and where are our skills? What are our values, as you talk about, our mission? It's so important, and once we figure out our intentions, then the doors open up. I really believe so strongly in that, because there's no other way of explaining.
The second realization I have come to is that everybody you meet can do something much better than you. So if you think you are just the cock of the walk and on top of the world and, just all around amazing, the next person you meet might be able to surf better than you, or make tacos better than you, or paint better than you. So, you don't have a monopoly on competence in the world. Everybody you meet can do something better than you. And that'll go a long way in life. You have that realization.
What do you want to look back and to wish you had done? 5 years from the future, what kind of decisions will you wish you'd made? And they usually mean you lived up to your values. And as soon as these leaders sort of recognize, well, my values actually free me to make the right decision with lower anxiety. Just going, I'm not thinking, okay, is this going to move my stock up or down? Is this going to get me in trouble with regulatory bodies or so forth? It's rather am I going to just live up to the values that all of our stakeholders hold us to? That made the decisions a lot easier for many of the best leaders out there.